this is interesting because I ran across this interrogate second, but after I ran across this an article by Hynek that says why you should document your tests, and so and I agree. So software makes a lot of good points. So I believe, and we have this policy where I work of tests should have doc strings on them to tell you kind of what the test is doing and why it's there. And there's a lot of reasons that I haven't ever really been able to describe clearly. Because ideally your test name should be descriptive and the code should be clear. So why do you need a doc string? That's not something that you're going to call from an API or anything, but
you probably won't type help function, test function, right? Maybe
right.
you would, probably not.
And you also don't call it. I mean, like test methods that you run PyTest with, PyTest calls it. You don't call those tests. But you can get confused in the future. And one of the explanations is Hynek has a good example where he shows some simple code with a simple test name, but the thing he's asserting on doesn't really make sense. And the reason, if you don't know what's going on under the hood, and the reason is because tests often are testing for a side effect of an action. If you're testing the output of a function, that's obvious. It's kind of obvious if I pass in functional tests, if you pass in certain parameters and you get a certain expected output, you can assert against that. But what about things actions that have side effects and you need to test for those? That might need some more explanation. And he writes, this is quite common in testing. Very often you can't ask questions directly. Instead, you verify certain properties that prove that your code is achieving its goals by checking side effects and stuff like that. It's a short little article, and I was just happy to have some of that expressed of why you should document, and it might be you that's confused in the future. And then it ties back into the interrogate because he lists. So I was just thinking when I was reading about interrogate, I'm like, oh, awesome! I really want to put something in place to just make sure all my tests have doc strings. And he lists in the article the exact command line that you need to make sure that just text to make sure that your tests have doc strings and nothing else. So this is cool.
Yeah, it looks really nice, and I can see how this would lead you down to finding a library that searches for or evaluates these. Yeah, so the test example he has here is testing that the hash, like creating the same object, the instance of a class twice, and taking the hash and making sure that those are not the same, because he's trying to test that adders is not implementing false on the class or something to that effect, right? So you're like, what the heck is going on with this? Like, why would you check the hash of a thing is not equal to the hash of a thing? But it's looking, like you said, for this sort of like hidden layer that's operating below it, right?
Yeah. And then also my reasoning, and I think he brings it up, is that if you're often when you're looking at a test, it's because you really got to get a release out, and one of the tests is failing. So you got to go look at the test and figure out what it's testing for and why it's failing. And if you don't have it clear why the test is important, you run the risk of the person at the time going, well, I don't even understand what this test does. Maybe it's not important. And just
comment it out.
Passes. You don't want that.
CI's good. We're going home.
So I don't do that, but I've heard it done before. Of course.
I would never do anything like that, but I could imagine that it has been done. Now, I've some experiences in the past where like there was some project and it had like a beautiful set of tests and CI and stuff, and I wasn't working on it anymore, and whoever took it over is like, oh, those tests were really annoying, so I turned them off. You're like, oh my gosh, those were there for a reason. What just happened? So at least like if this gives you some description about what's up, that would be good. Is there anything where like PyTest will show the doc string as part of the error report? Do you know?
I think there was somebody that wrote a tool that would do, I don't remember the name of it. I remember running across a plugin that would pop out the doc string for failed tests, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
But most people, hopefully, the person evaluating the test failures has access to the code. They can go look. So, but
Yeah, I'm thinking more of like a CI/CD. Like you don't have it like loaded up right there, right? You're just like, oh, I'm cruising on GitHub, checking a PR. What the heck is this?
yeah, I actually wrote it was an internal thing, but a quick plugin for PyTest that would just before every test function, print out the test name and print out the doc string, so that if we can look at the logs, it's there. So
yeah, that's cool. Very nice. Thank you for watching this segment of the Python Bytes podcast. This video was made during the recording of the full episode. Visit pythonbytes.fm and get the whole story. Subscribe to the podcast and get the entire episode delivered to your phone. Please support our work by taking one of the courses at pythonbytes.fm/courses or learning PyTest with Brian's book at pythonbytes.fm/PyTest. Finally, visit our sponsor shown on the screen here. Visit the link on the screen and get the special offer for Python Bytes and YouTube listeners. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.